Hi, I'm Nikki Henderson, staff writer with GovCIO Media and Research, and welcome to AI GovCast. I will be speaking with Zach Whitman, the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer at the General Services Administration. Zach will be discussing AI priorities, GSA's recent launch of a new AI tool, as well as the agency's future AI initiatives. Hello, Zach. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Nikki. I really appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into our conversation. Zach, can you start off by telling me a little bit about your past experiences at the Census Bureau and in industry, and how have they prepared you for your current role?
Yeah, so when I was the CDO at the Census Bureau for around 7 years, and it was an interesting time for me because had come from academia and then in industry, and I had always been I felt really strongly about data availability, data accessibility, data communication. What I would find in industry was that depending on the availability of data, whether or not it was the best data or whether or not it was the best solution, just having raw access to the federal data assets made a huge difference in terms of investment strategies for different companies or different private equities and sectors or even other governments. And so I've always been a huge proponent of making the data available to the public for general consumption as a top priority. And oftentimes there are a lot of barriers to accessibility with data because it's hard to use, or the systems are maybe a little Byzantine or hard to understand, or maybe the metadata is really complicated and it's not really approachable. And bridging those gaps for the data and the consumer has always kind of lit a fire under me and gotten me up in the morning. So at the Census Bureau, my main focus was doing everything we could to remove barriers of entry to the huge wealth of data that the Census Bureau produces. It really drives the economy in terms of how people react, and it's a huge indicator for not only business decisions but also personal life decisions. And the data helps you figure out where you might want to live or where you might want to move, where you go to work. These are really helpful, and so making everything we can more generally available has always been a big mission driver for me, which is dovetailed nicely into this function here at GSA, where not only do we have a huge wealth of data, but we also have the opportunity to provide shared services for other agencies, and where we make efforts like making AI more accessible for both the employee bases of each agency, but also for the direct consumption of their customers, be it other agencies or the public, is just a great opportunity.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really do appreciate it. Well, Zach, can you talk about your vision for AI at GSA and what are some of your top AI priorities?
Yeah, GSA, we have a few efforts, some of which are internally focused, ones that are meant to empower the function and mission of GSA, and then as part of an extension of that mission to look outside of GSA to support other agencies. So internally at GSA, we've been really focused on making sure that we democratize access to as many of the leading Gen AI capabilities as possible to encourage the employee base to understand how these tools can support them in their day-to-day function, reduce things like drudgery or routine functions, helping them focus more on the more interesting parts of the work rather than maybe the more rote or banal aspects of the day that ultimately can kind of pull you down or decrease your level of creativity. So a big effort has been in this development of what was GSAI, which is now turned into USAI, which is really the ability for our employees to all have access to a chatbot type capability, with access to all the leading models from the main foundation model providers, along with API access so that they can start to look at integrating those concepts that they've developed using the chatbot into a more automated workflow. And then also a way for them to learn about the models, to understand what models are right for what use cases, and a way for the administration to have a close eye on the appropriateness and the value of these solutions as they relate to the mission of GSA, so that we can understand that these tools are being used for missions critical activities and are moving us forward in our maturation of adoption for this new ground that we're covering. Secondarily, though, a big effort is making sure that our data are AI ready. It's very easy to initially launch these capabilities because they have such a broad base of function for a lot of back office activities, but they really start to shine when you integrate them with your mission data. And so a big effort we've been doing is working on our enterprise data platform so that everyone in the enterprise will have access to the data that they need to have access to in a central way, where they don't have to know someone to go find a data set residing on someone's local machine or some server somewhere. So one, making things broadly accessible and findable, which is a big task in and of itself. Secondarily, we want to make sure that the data are understandable, not just for people, but also for LLMs and machines. And what's nice about the whole AI space today is that to make your data AI ready, you oftentimes need to make it more human understandable, because the models will interpret the metadata in a way that would be better informed if a non-expert or a user coming into the data set could better understand it. So there's a real big push to making your data more accessible to both parties in a parallel way. And that's been a nice little gift, I think, as part of this whole effort has been moving forward. And then just making sure that everything's interoperable. So as we build these data products and we make them findable, we make them understandable to our employees, making sure that these data can move to where they need to go and be used for where they need to be used. You can physically be moving data to different subsystems to build efficiencies. You could be building models that could be derived from these data that should be used and used, incorporated as part of other systems. It doesn't matter exactly what the modality of the value is, but we just need to make sure that we have a system that could be flexible and help connect point to point on these different things, because that's where we'll see a lot of that cross-pollination start to thrive, where the data are actually being used to support the mission in a more direct way.
You just mentioned a USA.gov tool, and there are just a lot of exciting things happening at GSA right now, including that recent launch of USAi.gov. Can you talk about a little bit more about this new platform and how does it align with the White House AI Action Plan?
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure that we were building something that one, provide full access to all our employees without us worrying about how much each seat would potentially cost. We wanted to make sure that everyone had equal access to all these capabilities, because ultimately with that you get organic ideas coming up from across the organization when you expose folks to this capability. It's also an incredible learning tool, and giving folks hands-on access to the tools without having to worry about fear of these data being used for other things or leaving our boundary, providing a safe space for folks to experiment and feel free to try out ideas is really kind of like a mission driver here. The USAI platform consists of three kind of sub products that all kind of coalesce and work together. The first one is a chatbot. This is meant for your day-to-day type activities. It's emulated with the same design and patterns that you see across all the commercial aspects. The only unique piece of this one would be that you would have access to a variety of models from a variety of different vendors. Not every platform will do that. And this is, again, us making sure that our user base have access to the latest and the greatest. And given how dynamic this space is, we wanted to make sure that we were as inclusive of the model sets as possible. And then we wanted to also make sure that our team had access to information about how you can contextualize the differences of the different models, because certain models are better for certain purposes. And so providing as much exposition as to, oh, this, you might want to use this model for this use case or that model, and explaining why those differences exist has been a really helpful piece of this. The second component of USAi is an API. This is a central API that both drives the chatbot, but then can also be used to extend into third-party applications or connect programmatically to systems. And so this is great because the chatbot has the great mode of the chatbot is it's conversational, it's easy to adopt, but you are throttled by you asking a question and you getting a response. This is stretching out a little bit with the agent space, but fundamentally having it available, the capabilities available through an API makes that programmatic implementation even more powerful. You can deploy it into different things. Uh, you can start to make automated connections, and you can also integrate with other things. So, like if I'm a developer and I want to add LLMs to my development workflow, having that API available to then empower my IDE with that capability is really nice. And so it just builds a lot more flexibility and something that we'd like to see develop and grow within the organization. And then the third product is we're calling Console. This is a way for us to understand the telemetry of the use. And then this is where we understand, the basic admin stuff like how many people have logged in, how often are they using it, how many prompts are going across the wire, how much is it costing in total, how much token cost there is. But also it helps us understand how the thing is being used. And so we have abstraction code, which will define the use cases that we're seeing within the chatbot. So when I look at that board, it's all aggregated data, but it shows like we're asking things like, doing market research questions. We're doing document summarization. We can see, fleet optimization, PBS type functions, and seeing that we're seeing direct mission alignment in the use of this tool gives us a sense that this tool is actually helping our workflows and it's being used for those mission critical activities. And it helps us direct and course correct our trainings and our guidance on how you should use it. So that's very specific to GSA, and that's been an empowering moment for us, and it gives us the understanding that there could be application for other organizations for their specific contexts.
You were talking about the workflows just now. Can you talk about some of the other like key benefits that the federal workforce will see from using USAi.gov?
Yeah, so we treat it as a toolkit as the AI action plan calls for. This supports the robust evaluation and testing of different models. As part of the console, we include three types of evaluation constructs. One being the raw performance of the models, and these are a number of tests that we're pulling together. The second category would be on the safety aspects, how durable these models are against certain types of malicious attacks or misuse. And then the third type of evaluation sets are bringing your own evaluation to it. And this would be agency specific. So all of these foundation model builders are considering how to make their models stronger and safer. Those are generic problems that they will always chase, but no one's going back and thinking about how I can make these models better for GSA or NIST or CISA. These are our specific questions. And so we built this ability for agencies to define their own tests so they can see how models perform on the missions critical activities of their agency rather than it just relying on these generic things, which is great because you can start to look at use cases a little differently. When you're considering what model to use for what use case, you can start with your evaluation set and say we're building something that works on the FAR. We can have a FAR test and we can say, okay, so this model works best under these conditions for FAR-based questions. And we can see what that evaluation score is, and then we can have a conversation, is that score good enough for this use case? Does this score need to be higher because it's a more critical function, or does it not need to be so high because it's more in the internal phases and it doesn't need to be 100% accurate all the time? And then if it does need to be better, you can progressively augment that model through a number of different steps and see if it gets better or worse, depending on what you do. And then ultimately, you have at least a better, more data-informed conversation with your safety team to say, I would like to use this model for this use case because it adheres to this test bank and it's fit for purpose. And this is ultimately our goal is we want to make sure that our tenant agencies are are able to benefit from the good evaluation work that's happening in industry and academia, but also from their own subject matter experts and make data-informed decisions as to how they want to adopt AI, and also help them move their local culture forward in this adoption, because it's not easy to get everyone to use AI, and it's not necessarily something that will just happen overnight. This takes effort, work, and careful curation to do it in a really responsible and transparent way.
How will this latest platform also help boost efficiency and security as well as improve interoperability?
Yeah, so a big part of that is the API in the way in which we've designed it.
Mm.
One, it allows for agencies to effectively build their own model garden and not be restricted by where they need to source the information. A lot of the places where the certain models are available from the different hyperscalers are models that agencies may not want to be made available to their general workforce. DeepSeek would be an example of that. Having a single pane of glass for and a control surface where an agency CIO and CISO and CIO can come to the table and say, these are the models that we want to make available for a chatbot. These are the models that we'd like to make available for the API. Is an incredibly important first step to making sure that we have strong controls over how the models are being used, and making sure that we can understand potential biases or safety issues that may exist within different models that, while technically available, we do not want to be made available to the general workforce. Secondarily, we want to make sure that we are moving culture to look for agentic flows or API integrations wherever possible. Again, the chatbot is a great initial party to begin to try out concepts, but ultimately we want to make sure that we are moving towards a more efficient space. And so the idea that there is a transactional chat response workflow is something that we want to move to more of an automated flow, where we're bridging some of the workflows into further and further automational steps. So instead of it relying on a human in loop at every single step, we put guardrails in place and then begin to automate two steps in a row, maybe three steps in a row, and then have the human in the loop in a later step. And so that's where the API is fundamental for those types of deeper integrations. It allows for further expansion into things like MCP servers, where you can start to build multiple agent steps between each other. And you can do a loosely coupled integration with your data stores. This provides incredible power and flexibility where typical RPA type actions are a little bit more rigid. And so building this more flexible integration set allows for a lot more automation capability.
Well, so in what ways is generative AI helping, would you say, enhance and transform GSA's overall operations?
One starts with culture, starts with making sure that folks understand the capability, understand its benefits, its limitations, but also making sure that folks feel comfortable using it freely. I think there's been for a long time this culture of, well, using it might be considered cheating, or maybe we're becoming over reliant in it. And so it's that smart adoption and workforce development effort that really is the deep and thoughtful effort that we're trying to undertake here. I think the capabilities speak for themselves, and we can make them technically available, but figuring out how to ingrain the functions in an empowering way for the employees is the really critical piece of the work. And that's where the real wins will happen. We can make everything integrated, we can make everything available, but without the leadership of the employees, and how best those technologies support their mission and function, these technologies won't actually build those efficiencies. And so we're looking towards the users on these capabilities. How can we help support? Where do you need this capability? How do you need it? In what ways can we help you refactor processes so that this can help you? Though that's the real work. It's
Right.
not as technical, but it's certainly the more interesting and difficult and challenging work, and it's very fun to be at the forefront of this.
Yes, it is. It's exciting. And yes, once you get over that, I get that obstacle of people, I guess the hesitancy, not understanding and just being, I guess, maybe a little fearful. Once you get over that, it'll be smooth sailing, as you say. Well, can you talk a little bit about the lessons that GSA has learned from previous AI pilots?
Yeah, so we've run a lot of pilots, and I think what's it's been an interesting story where we started, we were one of the first agencies to release a public use LLM policy where employees were allowed to use public tools for non-sensitive use cases. This was a really great first step. It empowered employees to begin to try this stuff out. The lessons were that one, the capabilities were seen as overwhelmingly positive. There was a clear value proposition here. But there were two camps that kind of emerged from that. The first camp was the folks who already knew that this thing was great, and they were asking, like, look, I'd like to be able to use this, but I can't because I'm restricted to these non-sensitive use cases. So I'd really like it if you guys could make something available for the agency internally that we could use for more typical workflow features. So there's that group that were frustrated because they couldn't use it for their more day-to-day operational stuff. And then there were the folks who were kind of getting into this and they were trying to experiment and they wanted to learn about it, but they were afraid of using the public tools because they were like, I don't want to do something that I shouldn't. I don't want to put data in that I shouldn't be. And there was a fear aspect to that, which it impacted their ability to try it out. They weren't able to experiment as freely as they would have. And so they were asking, we'd like something internal so we could use it so that we can experiment and learn how to use this thing a little bit more freely. So there was an interesting kind of bimodal distribution of those who were like, I just want to get into this, but I'm afraid of this. And then people are like, this is great, but I can't use it for real stuff. So there was that kind of aspect. And then when we brought it in, and we were piloting like sub products, we found that there was direct value, but again, deeper integrations were always being asked for. Making sure that we had enough training material and onboarding and consistent messaging as to how this thing would be used. How does it use the content that you provided? Very important. But also the importance of making sure that it had multiple modes of interaction, not just a chat interface suffices for an enterprise play, not just an API. You have to have a full suite of capabilities. You have to have a full suite of models available because certain models will be better suited for other things. And also making sure that everyone can have access to it. That was another thing. The UK did a great study where they were trying to study how you can get cultural and enterprise adoption with these types of tools. And one of the key learnings across this study, as well as across the literature, is making sure that everyone has access to the tool. You can find organic learnings from folks who are sitting next to one another, saying like, "Hey, look what I did here," instead of it just being provided to a subset of users. Um, you find better adoption curves where everyone has access to the same stuff. So that was a great piece of that was a great finding that we were able to corroborate from the literature as well. And it comes back to again the people really. The technology is there. It's a tool, is part of a tool belt, but making sure that we do it in a way that empowers the folks on the ground is really the core outcome that we're trying to achieve here.
Well, Zach, are you excited to share or talk about any future AI initiatives that may be in the works?
I'll stick with just the potential shared service of USAi and our enterprise data solution right now. Those two are certainly taking up a fair bit of effort. I will say the effort that we're doing on the mass deals, so like these discounted offerings for different Gen AI capabilities are an incredible addition to the potential tools in the tool belt for different agencies. And we're super proud of the work that the FAS team has been doing in terms of achieving these incredible deals. We're always partnering with industry and how we can learn from each other and benefit from our shared efforts is really great. So the idea that we can start to make more tools available to agencies through these mass deals and through the good work from the FedRAMP team and their 20X program is incredible. And I'll also say that there's so much good work happening across the federal landscape at other agencies. So much good research is happening at NIST with the Casey team or CISA with their red teaming efforts. DoD has a great work on their red teaming and as well as Census Bureau. So there's like so much happening in really good thought happening in the federal landscape from some really talented people. And I'm just really proud to be a part of that group.
That's awesome. Well, before we conclude, I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you have any comments or remarks that you would like to leave with our audience.
If you're interested in hopping on to the USAi platform, this is for federal agencies. So these are usually CIO to CIO type conversations or your CIO. Please reach out to us at partnerships@USAi.gov. And if you have questions about any of those mass deals or the 20X program, feel free to reach out to partnerships as well. We can always redirect you to the FedRAMP team or the FAST team who are leading those efforts as well. So, open door as always for questions, comments, or any kind of ideas you might have.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, Zach. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. It was great hearing about all of the exciting things happening with AI right now over at GSA. And I just want to thank you so much for your time. And I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much, you too.